Jai Ganesha on the Mic family. Tonight, I am going to discuss why the Mahabharata's real war happened before the dice were thrown. Well, we are taught that the Mahabharata was decided on the battlefield. But what if the war was already lost long before Kurukshetra? What if the real conflict wasn't fought with weapons, but with perception, silence, and the careful manipulation of virtue itself? Tonight, we're not retelling an epic, we're looking at what was hiding in plain sight.
When you think of the Mahabharata, what comes to mind, right? It's probably these huge battles, gods descending from the heavens, these larger-than-life heroes. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the real war, the one that truly mattered, wasn't fought with arrows and chariots at all, but with whispers, secret codes, and some serious psychological manipulation? That's what we're going to do today. We're peeling back the layers to look at the epic as a massive espionage thriller. Think about that for a second. The real war began the day the dice rolled. Wow, that one line, it just flips the whole epic on its head, doesn't it? It means that Kurukshetra, that gigantic, world-ending battle we all focus on, wasn't the start of the fight. No way. It was just the final, explosive scene of a much longer, much quieter war. A war of intelligence, of strategy, that had been burning in the shadows for years. So let's talk about what was really going on inside Hastinapura, an empire of secrets. You know, you can almost imagine this deep state operating just beneath the surface. Forget all the pomp and circumstance, the big courtly rituals. Way before a single arrow was ever fired, the real power in that city was flowing through these hidden channels. We're going to take a look at the invisible engine that was actually running this empire. And that engine, it was fueled by secrets and information. And this right here, this is the absolute key to understanding everything. On the outside, for everyone to see, the kingdom was all about dharma. You know, righteousness, duty, cosmic order, the whole deal. But that was just the veneer. Behind that shiny surface, the real gears of the empire, the machinery that made it all work, that was power. And that power was held together by secrecy, by clever strategy, and a non-stop flow of intelligence. So, who were the agents in this secret war? Well, the fundamental unit of this whole system was the chara, the spy. And these weren't your typical spies in disguise. Think of them more like listeners, observers, shadows that were literally woven into the fabric of everyday life. They were the ones picking up whispers at the local market, by the temples, everywhere. They were the ones who built this invisible architecture of power that kept the king in control. And just look at how massive this network was. I mean, this wasn't some centralized spy agency like we'd imagine today. Not at all. It was this incredible decentralized web. You had information flowing from courtiers inside the palace, from forest dwellers with their secrets, cooks and servants who heard absolutely everything. Even sages were basically traveling intelligence officers. Emissaries, you bet they were spies in diplomats' robes. It's like everyone was a potential node in this massive intelligence grid. All right, so in this massive shadow war, this information war, two figures really stood out. Two masterminds. You can think of them as the grand masters of a giant chess game, moving all the pieces from the shadows, and literally shaping the fate of an empire with their incredible strategic minds. And here they are, pitted against each other. It's the perfect contrast. On one side, you've got Vidura, the protector. His whole game is about preserving the system, protecting the Kuru house, and making sure Dharma wins out. His tools? Coded warnings and back-channel diplomacy. And on the other side, Shakuni, the disruptor. His mission is pure vengeance for his homeland, Gandhara. And his weapon of choice? Psychological operations, psyops, designed to break the system from the inside out. Okay, time for our first piece of evidence. Let's call it assassination by architecture. We're talking about the Jadugriha operation, the infamous House of Lack. Now, this wasn't just some petty act of jealousy by Duryodhana. No, this was a meticulously planned covert op, a state-sponsored assassination plot, cleverly disguised as a generous royal gift. And the plot itself was just diabolically simple and so cruel. I mean, think about it. The Pandavas are sent to this beautiful palace of joy. Sounds right, right? Except it was a highly sophisticated death trap. The entire thing was built out of lac, resin, ghee, wax, basically anything that's just begging for a flame. They literally weaponized the architecture itself. So here's the play-by-play. It's a classic operation versus counter-operation. First, the deceptive proposal. Hey Pandavas, go relax in this beautiful palace of joy. Step 2, the construction. This whole palace is built to burn. But then comes the countermove. Vidura, the spy master, sends a coded warning. And that one piece of intelligence changes everything. It gives the Pandavas enough time to engineer their own escape, a secret tunnel, turning a perfect assassination plot into an incredible story of survival. All right, let's move on to our second piece of evidence. And this one is even more subtle and honestly way more devastating. We're talking about the dice game. But you have to understand, this wasn't just a game of chance. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, a full-blown psyops campaign designed to completely dismantle a king's mind live in front of his entire court. And here's the absolute genius and the horror of Shakuni's strategy. He didn't go after Yudhishthira's weaknesses. Anyone can do that. Instead, he weaponized his greatest strength, his unwavering, almost rigid commitment to dharma. Yudhishthira's code of honor as a king. Shakuni turned it into a weapon against him. It's like a martial arts move, using your opponent's own momentum to bring them crashing down. And you can just watch the psychological collapse happen, roll by devastating roll. Shakuni just keeps escalating the stakes. First, it's wealth and gold. Okay. Then the chariots and armies. Then the entire empire. Gone. But he's not done. He pushes and pushes until Yudhishthira bets his brothers, then himself, and then that final, unbelievable, catastrophic roll where he wagers Draupadi. And in that moment, everything is just shattered. And then, silence. Draupadi asks her question. Whom did you lose first, yourself or me? And with those words, the entire game changes, because that's not just a question. It's a nuclear bomb of a philosophical challenge. It completely blows past all the legal arguments and points directly to the moral black hole at the center of the room. Suddenly, this isn't about politics anymore. It's a spiritual crisis, which brings us all the way back to where we started. The physical war, Kurukshetra, all that blood, all that glory, it was really just an aftershock. The real war, the one that actually decided the fate of the entire Kuru dynasty, wasn't fought on a battlefield with swords and arrows. It was fought on a mental battlefield, inside the minds of its leaders. Let's be really clear about this. The psychological collapse that happened in that court, that wasn't the prelude to the war. It was the first battle. The empire didn't fall when the first soldier died on the field of Kurukshetra. It had already collapsed from the inside out, right there in that hall. That moment of humiliation, the broken oaths, the chilling silence of the elders, that was the real war. Kurukshetra was just the bloody cleanup of a ruin that was already there. So we're left with this really powerful, kind of chilling thought. If the greatest wars truly begin in the mind, have they ever really ended? The Mahabharata shows us that the seeds of these huge, world-changing conflicts aren't planted on battlefields, but in psychology, in pride, in manipulation. It suggests that the real war is always internal. And maybe, just maybe, that's a war that every single generation and every one of us has to fight over and over again.
I didn't approach the Mahabharata looking for a new story. I approached it because certain patterns refused to stay quiet. The more I read Vyasa closely, the more it became clear this wasn't just a tale of heroes and villains, but a study of how power works before it ever turns violent. That question eventually became Shadows of Hastinapura. So, to conclude, if today's conversation left you slightly unsettled, slightly curious, or made you pause and rethink what you thought you knew, that's a good place to be. Some stories end when the war is over, because some stories aren't meant to convince us, they are meant to change how we see. Once you see it, Hastinapura never looks the same. With this, good night, Har Har Mahadev, Jai Hind.